Hello, friends. Welcome to the Wednesday night discussion. Next week is our last week of the classes on Monday night. Uh, so let me know here. I'll ask again probably halfway through the session tonight. Do we want to keep this on Wednesday nights, or would you prefer to go back to Monday nights? I want to do what's convenient to you, and and have continue to have these discussions. I would also like to get some real good interviews going. I'm trying to get John Jacob Schmidt, who is the author of the Partisan Operator Journals. He operates the Amron net. That's and let me give you that. That is the American. I have it set up on channel 3 right now. The American Readout Radio Operators Network, and it's also called the American Preparedness Radio Network. Um, he's ex-Special Forces. Gosh, I tell you, reading his book, just unbelievable what I'm picking up as far as learning about communications and ham and everything. And so I would really, really like to get him on and let's talk communications. We're going to talk a little bit about that tonight. And we're going to talk a little bit about a possible Red Dawn situation. I have been, hello, Little Lone Prepper. Welcome, Mark. Welcome. Yeah, everything is fantastic. Cowboy 3-2 actual. Wow. You know what? That tells me you're military. When you say actual, gosh. Haven't used cowboys. That sounds like it's almost Air Force. But we were disguised 3-3 was our unit call sign when I was at Fort Riley, Kansas. 337th ASA Company. Now it's Company A, 101st MI Battalion after ASA and MI merged. That happened back in 1978-ish, I'm going to say. But anyhow, so the topic tonight is there a possibility of a Red Dawn? Is there something to be concerned about? So what I was doing was I was taking a look at, I don't know if you've seen them, but busloads of Chinese being bused to the southern border. Clean shoes, clean clothes, almost all of them military-age men, unaccompanied, nice haircuts and everything else. They just look like, straight out of boot camp or out of advanced individual training and being shipped to Mexico and brought across the border by the busload full. So I started doing an investigation. I said, how many of them are there? And it looks like we probably had around 8,000 to 10,000 actual encounters. That's the number who have been stopped at the border and interrogated or what they define as an encounter is they had a discussion with the person. And then it doesn't go from there as to whether they were expelled, put into the United States with a, court hearing date for asylum 25 years in the future or whatever. It does not go into that. It just says that they encountered them. Then if you extrapolate that into the number of unknowns who may have crossed, then it appears that there could be anywhere upwards to 80,000 potential military Chinese inside our country in civilian clothing. That's a potential. That is not an actual, okay? For an actual number, we're going to use somewhere in the vicinity of 10,000. And so, we just want to be aware of that. And so then we take that and we extrapolate that further and we say, well, they don't have, unless they were all from the same unit, which I doubt very sincerely, because it'd be too hard to get them across the border and then to get them into a collection point where they're all going to get together without being totally observable. So, getting these people together into a cohesive military unit is probably not going to happen. And now there may be several small subunits. I would say probably the size of a Special Forces Alpha team. Hello, Shenanigans. Welcome. Diana, too. Welcome. Is Auslander Jack on? Gosh, he is. Wow. Hello, Jack. Just watched a video of his that I hope everybody can take a good look at. And he's talking about concentration camps are in the future, and it's the Australian perspective. And so, always good to see you, Jack. I love watching your videos. There's so much of Australia and West Texas and what they have in common. But anyhow, back to the um, subject at hand. So then I use my experience as an intelligence analyst, and I say, what are they going to do? Well, we probably have all these small special forces units or special forces type units, maybe 10-man special forces A teams, going around in the country with different objectives, and that is going to be because if they want to do a war, remember I did a report here a little while ago, Colonel. The two colonels, I'm not going to try to remember their names. They wrote a book right after Desert Storm, and it was called Unrestricted Warfare. And so it basically tells us that the Chinese plan is to attack us in such a way that it does not appear that we're being attacked. So a whole bunch of random attacks at different things, different places, different times. As a matter of fact, my wife and I were talking today, and at exercise today, there was a lady that was really into conspiracy theories, and she said, that she thinks that the Canadians have lit all these forest fires because of their hatred to the U.S. And I said, no, I don't think so. Now, if you told me that the Chinese have set the fires as a distraction to the U.S. or as a preliminary thing of their unrestricted warfare, or as Lieutenant General Flynn calls it, fifth generation warfare, then I could possibly see into that a little bit. But I think more likely, the more likely situation that we're going to be seeing with the Chinese is, I would not put it past them to start doing some of the subversive things that we did with the French, what were they called? Underground, the French underground in World War II, where you had the French underground, we would drop in items to them and they would disrupt rail traffic. They would, change signs and cause the Germans, who at that time, in 1943, 1944, fuel was becoming extremely important to them. And so they couldn't waste any fuel. If you'll remember, the Battle of the Bulge was lost because they ran out of fuel. But anyhow, so, the destroying their fuel dumps and everything else in World War II. So I see that same type of a thing possibly happening with our Chinese friends who are coming into our country. So what are some of the things that I've seen that I would be very, very suspicious of? Number one, there have been an awful lot of fires and explosions at food processing plants, food distribution plants, food production plants that are unexplained. That to me is highly suspicious. We've had an awful lot of train derailments. Now, yeah, we have an aging infrastructure, and everything is for profit, so it's not necessarily the best maintained. I spent some time with the electric power distribution industry, and so I take a look at power poles as I'm driving down the street, and I see the number of them that are leaning and being supported with guy wires and everything else, and I'm thinking, gosh, that's going to fall, but they aren't going to do anything. They aren't going to spend any money to prevent it. They're just going to spend the money to repair it once it does fall. And so those are some of the kind of things I'm thinking about. But what will the Chinese do? It only takes 9 substations in the U.S. being blown, and that will put us into a blackout, a grid down scenario. Hello, Rick. Welcome. And so, we could say that, let's just say that 8 of those or 10 of those 10-man teams, 100 Chinese, are here for the sole purpose of each one of them taking out a substation. Then we are put into a grid down situation, and gosh, that can cause all kinds of problems. But even before that, there are some other things. What else could cause us to be into a grid down scenario? So of course you got CMEs, and we've got very high activity I strongly recommend that every morning Suspicious Observer puts out a 2 to 3 minute video on solar activity and whether we're going to be hit with an X or an M class CME, solar winds, and things like that. He also talks an awful lot about the pole shift. So he does daily updates on that. Get in the habit of watching Suspicious Observer. It's usually about 2 to 3 minutes every morning. Also check windy.com every morning when you first get up. But so CMEs, that's a possibility. EMP is a possibility. I believe, this is my personal belief, and I have no proof, I have no suspicions, I have nothing that can prove one way or the other. I don't think that was a spy satellite that North Korea was trying to put into orbit. North Korea has 2 satellites that currently cross over the U.S. Twice a day. So we got 4 different windows where we have a North Korean satellite over the U.S. every day. And those are capable of being an EMP. So that's our second big threat, is an EMP. And that could be either from a satellite, that could be from one of these Chinese balloons, it could be from an ICBM. But, that's the second way we could lose all of our electricity as far as the grid. The third way, of course, is going to be a physical attack. And we have had several physical attacks. We've had attacks in Arizona, California, North Carolina, where somebody has been trying to shoot out the transformers, has been trying to short circuit the transformers and things like that. So, and this has been going on, gosh, we had reports of it when I was working in that industry, and that was during the years 2012 to 2015. I don't have access to that information anymore. It would not surprise me to find out that we haven't been continuing with attempts to take out some of our distribution substations and things like that. Of course, the one that I think is probably going to be the most probable as far as doing away with our grid is going to be some sort of a hack. Chinese are really good at hacking into our internet and our controllers. So the internet controller for all of everything we do in the United States is called SCADA, SCADA. And if they could hack into that and just backfeed or cross wires on 2 different substations against each other, that could take everything out as well. But they'd have to do it for 9 substations. Fairly easy. If you've hacked into the system, you've got it going. So that's a pretty good thing we can do. Now remember that the commission, the EMP commission, reported to Congress that if we have a grid down scenario and we lose electricity for 1 year or longer, that at the end of the first year, we will probably lose 90% of our population for different things. The key thing I want you to remember here is that desperate people will do desperate things. And that's kind of what we talked about last night with Selko Begovich's book. Let me catch up here on the comments. Butch Graves from Colorado. Hi, Marie 2024. No, you're not late. You're fine. You're fine. We're happy that you're here. We're all dependent on the People's Republic of China for just about everything. Absolutely. The thing that bothers me the most is that we're so dependent upon them for most of our medical supplies and for pharmaceuticals. I can't believe we got ourselves into a situation where we are so dependent upon them for pharmaceuticals and medical supplies. Abbott Labs used to have a sterile saline production plant pretty close to the factory where I worked at Dell. And but they closed that down. They shipped all that sterile saline, the stuff for IVs. That's now made in China as well. Just think what they could do if they slipped 1 or 2 germs into 1 or 2 of those bags, and we're putting all of our chips in that basket. Gosh, that's unbelievable. Thank you, Little Lone Prepper. Appreciate that. You are totally correct, especially down here in the South where we become so dependent upon it. When I grew up, in El Paso, you get into the high hundreds, and we were happy to have what we called swamp coolers. So they were evaporative coolers, and it was just basically a big fan on the roof of the house. And just a minute, the girls are scratching to get outside the door. Two overly demanding chihuahuas, and they'll scratch the paint off the door if I don't let them out. And now they're going to do, here in a little while, they're going to want back in. So that's going to be another incursion. Helen goes into the bedroom and watches TV in the bedroom while I do these so that she doesn't bother us. Or else I would ask her to let the girls out and in. Yeah, if we had, I'm going to call it the summer of love repeat. In Korea, when it gets really hot and humid, that's when all the students do all their rioting, and they call it when cherry blossom time. But yeah, the heat of the summer, I think as it heats up, we're going to see more and more civil unrest this year. I think we may see another summer of love. And, as people get more and more uncomfortable with the heat, they get more and more, their tempers flare higher and higher and hotter. And so I'm afraid of that as well. Hello, Tofu. I think that could be one of the things that breaks our back this coming summer. There very well could be. We do know. I let the girls outside. If you would pay attention for when they went back in. Okay, thank you. No, that's very, very probable, and not just possible, but very probable. And the reason I say that is because we know that there is an Al Qaeda terrorist training camp just outside Ciudad Juarez, which is outside of El Paso, and so we do know that there is that training camp there. So the probability of having some sort of a weapons smuggling capability or other military deployments capable of a cross-border incursion are very highly likely, in my opinion. So I agree with you there, Rick. I think that is something that we all need to pay attention to. And we're going to talk about solutions here very shortly. So just let me catch up with a couple more things here. I was, here's what I was thinking, Slender Jack. Because I think part of my solution that I want to present about here later is how are we going to communicate and report if we have a grid down situation? They say turn to the emergency broadcast system, 1470, and I forget what the other one is, 920 on your dial or something like that. Are we going to have electricity? How long are we going to have electricity to power those AM transmitters? And maybe a week at the most. So after a week, we aren't going to have gasoline to power those AM stations. So how are we going to get information back and forth as to whether, let's say, they've hacked into the water supply and the water supply is now contaminated, or whether or not there is a battalion-sized unit moving on Interstate 10 from El Paso to Odessa? How are we going to get that kind of information? So I started I'm looking more and more into ham radio. And I'm not talking about the Yaesu and Baofeng VHF, UHF. I'm talking more about the 20 meter HF continuous wave single sideband. And so as I'm looking more and more at that, almost all of those are made in China. So I wonder if they have a little switch in them to where they could turn those off, and then we wouldn't have communications at all inside our country. In the event of some sort of cataclysmic event, and that's crazy. It's just totally crazy. So I'm trying to find, as I look for my communication solutions, I'm trying to look for things that are made either in Taiwan or in Korea. That's our best choice other than the actual China. Oh, fantastic, Dragon Slayer. So yeah, I think that's phenomenal. I bought a sourdough kit, and it's in my pantry. I haven't started the sourdough yet. It takes about 14 days from start until you get sourdough. I figure I can go 14 days while that starter does its thing, and so I can start making bread. But I have not yet tried to make bread in the Dutch oven. That is one of my goals this summer. And we were at Costco last weekend and saw an LPG, a liquid petroleum gas fired pizza oven. And gosh, I couldn't believe it. It makes a pizza in 4 minutes, like 600 degrees. It was unbelievable. But yeah, but Helen says, yeah, it was $200. So we didn't get that quite for sure. I probably won't even get it for Christmas. So yeah, I think bread is going to be very, very critical. I think so. Number one, make sure you are storing flour. Flour is one of those critical shortage items that we're going to see at the end of the summer, and everybody's saying that's going to be one of the short items. I recommend that you get your flour canned, pre-canned from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. They have the 48 Provident Living Centers throughout the U.S., and so you can probably find one where you can pick up the cans of flour in your area. And, that's going to be one of the better ways to store it, unless you want to go to the effort of, and I find that with powdered items, it's more difficult to compress the bags and use an oxygen absorber and everything else to really seal those real well. Because I really want to vacuum seal that and suck the air out. But when you have a powder, when you're sucking the air out, you have a tendency to also suck out some of that powder, and so that can ruin your equipment. One of the things I do know is what you can do, although it clumps it a little bit, is you can take dry ice and put that in your bag, and then the dry ice, as it melts, produces carbon dioxide. The carbon dioxide is heavier than air, so it pushes the air out. So now all you have in that bag is carbon dioxide, and then it's very easy to seal that. I've considered about Civi sat phone system. I've asked, but no one can answer. Military is direct link to sat. Civi are connected to a land-based connection. I don't know anything about that, Rick, but let me write down, because that looks like a question. If I find anybody who is knowledgeable. And so what I did today was, we have a local ham radio club, and they have a coffee Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at McDonald's. They get together. And so I went there this morning. I read the time wrong. Instead of being there from 9 to 10, I was there from 10 to 10:30. So I'll have to redo that Friday and see if I can't hook up with them. I'm also really going to continue on trying to get John Jacob Schmidt on, in his book, in this book, the technical stuff he goes into as far as ham and everything else is just unbelievable. So maybe we can ask him as well. So Civi sat phone. I will see if I can't find some information on that, and maybe get somebody on to talk about it who knows, because I don't know anything about it. I don't even know if I pronounced it right. So it tells you where I am. I really don't know the answer to that, Rick. Yeah, you're asking some very good questions. I wish I had enough knowledge where I could even guess at taking an answer for you. So, and that's one of the other questions that I want to get answered is, Amron runs what he called the Channel 3 project, got Nats, doggone it, the Channel 3 project. And so what they say is, if anything happens in the country, like if all of a sudden there are Chinese sleeper cells and they start doing things in the country, and we lose the AM radio stations and our emergency broadcast system, then basically what they want to do is they want to set up a network of ham radio operators. So the ham radio operators, and think of this as kind of like being the old U.S. Army Mars system, the military affiliated or amateur radio system. So like when I was in Germany in the early 70s and wanted to call home, if you used the Bundespost, it would cost you, a month's pay for a 15-minute conversation to call home. On the other hand, if you talk to Mars, and same thing from Vietnam, from Korea, etc., we had a Mars radio there, and what Mars would do is they would connect with another Mars station close to your home. Then they would hook up a landline to that ham radio, so you could talk back and forth with that person from overseas. So that's kind of like what the Channel 3 is trying to do. What they're trying to do is set up an affiliate radio system of all these ham radio operators throughout the U.S. Then those ham radio operators can convert that information that's reported over that radio system to CB, MERS, FRS, and GMRS type radios and get that disseminated out locally, because those are all going to be local type of transmission radios. So that's one of the things that Channel 3 project is trying to get accomplished, and that's what I would like to become more and more observant of, more and more aware of, more and more capable of, and see if I can't get into that as well. Yeah, the hackers have done a job in the past. I think they will continue to do a job until it's to the point to where, it's going to be very successful. And I think, unfortunately, that will be too late for us. But so the question becomes okay, so Dragonslayer is saying that there's a cheap way to build a pizza oven. Cheap. That's great. Oh, I tell you what, I turned Helen onto parchment paper, and now she is sold on it. And so I used to have probably 12 rolls in my SHTF locker out in the garage, because parchment paper doesn't go bad out in the garage. And I think I'm down to about 4. So we probably need to start replacing that. Gosh, we're finding all kinds of stuff we've been negligent in replacing as we used it in our pantry, that we're going to have to start taking care of. Wow. That's very interesting. I'll have to check into that. Maybe I can find something on here on YouTube. Civilian. Okay, so civvy is civilian. It's just like what we say in the Army. Damper bread. Okay, looking that up. Thank you for that. Scrapper, good evening. Welcome. Let's see what we got. Yeah, we used to do a very simple one. I forget what we called it, where we basically made a dough and then we wrapped it almost like a very round, thick pretzel. We'd wrap it around the stick and stick the stick over the fire. That's how we made bread in Boy Scouts. So, we're probably going to do the same thing here. I think it was some sort of an Native American bread. So Little Lone Prepper, it brings us to another condition here, and that is that the water storage is only going to last about 2 days under normal conditions. And I don't even think it'll last 3 to 4 days, to be honest with you, because I think people will be trying to hoard water. So what happens is, if you take a look, you have the towers and you have the standpipes. And so you have the water, you have a small electric pump, and that electric pump is pumping the water up into either the standpipe or the water tower, and then it fills up that tank up top. And as it fills up that tank, of course, you've got the combination of the weight of the water as well as the height above ground, and that's what creates the water pressure that you get in your pipes and in your house and everything. So as soon as we lose electrical power, then there is no more water being pumped up into those standpipes or into those towers. And so as that water drains down, of course, you're going to get less and less pressure over time. And as more and more people use it, then you're going to have less and less water available to you. And and then people will get desperate for that as well. Do I remember when everyone was sick and they were testing the sewage to get an idea of how many people were sick? Do you think they would use that same knowledge? If we don't have electricity, then most of the chemical laboratories won't be able to do their thing and do the testing, because you've got to You're going to run it through a centrifuge. You're going to apply different tests to it. You're going to look under electron microscopes and things like that. So I have a feeling that no, that we probably are not going to be able to test that as well. However, here's my personal thought. Okay, and once again, I don't have anything to back this up, no proof or anything else. I don't think that any invading army is going to use any kind of a biological agent that is not immediately and easily controlled, because the goal would be to acquire the country and its assets, that is, its natural resources. And so, if, for example, the resource is our uh, food production, then you don't want to contaminate the soil. So you aren't going to use ground bursts and nuclear attack, because that's going to provide radiation. You're not going to do it in such a way that you have a whole bunch of our nuclear power plants going into meltdown. You're not going to use chemical or biological agents that are uncontrollable or that don't have an immediate remedy for. So I think that I personally am going to rule out the likelihood of chemical, biological, and ground burst radiological events. I just, in my mind, I can't justify that if they want to occupy our country. And, that would just be terrible. Now, Tracy, hello, Tracy, by the way, brings up a very good point, and that is when this happens, if these sleeper cells take out our grid, and I think that's the worst case scenario, is that they would take out the grid, because remember, 90% will die within a year. So that means medical care. I was talking to somebody who had a friend who today, I was talking today to a friend who had a friend on a surgical table. They were operating on them when there was a power outage. And of course, the hospital emergency backup system immediately kicked in, and everything was in minimum electrical power, and they were able to save her. But golly, can you imagine being on the operating table when there's a power loss? That would be crazy. So anyhow, so what they say is that most of us, the vast majority of us, that's not us, because we're a little bit smarter than the average cookie, are 9 meals away from chaos. So most people probably only have about a 3-day supply of food in their home. And we all use just-in-time inventory. So, when I was growing up back in the 60s and 70s, you could always say, hey, could you go back in the back and check and see if you have any new ketchup, let's say, if you have any spare ketchup, there's none on the shelves. They don't do that anymore. There is no back area. There is not, well, if there is, there's not that much of it, because everything is computerized. So the order is put in. When you go, let's say, to Walmart and you're scanning those items for checkout, the minute you scan it, what happens is it gets entered into the computer, and the computer says, what is our threshold for reorder? So when our inventory gets down to this number, then we're going to generate an order to our distribution center so that we get something brought in to replace it. So let's say that they say, okay, our minimum threshold is we have to have 40 bottles of Heinz ketchup at 32-ounce size at all times. Okay, so our threshold is going to be 32. So once we get down to 32, then we're going to generate an order that takes us back up to 40. Well, that's all computerized. So if we don't have electricity, then we aren't going to have that regeneration or that reordering. And with you don't have any backroom supplies, nothing's back there waiting to be put out on the shelves, and there's no ordering, then we probably have about a 3-day supply of food in most of our grocery stores. Now, what's going to happen is when people start panicking that they don't have food, it's going to be the toilet paper crisis of 2020 all over again. The people are going to go and they're going to try to get 5-6 cases of toilet paper or 4 or 5 cases of SpaghettiOs, and that's going to be the situation. It'll get to the point where it has to be rationed. But once people get to that point, that's going to make Black Friday shopping after Thanksgiving look like a walk through the park, because people are going to be desperate for food, because it means that whether they exist or don't exist. Worse than that, I think the most dangerous thing is going to be a parent who's afraid that their children are going to starve. I can starve. I can go without food for a day or two. You tell me that my grandchildren are going to starve, and that they won't make it unless I give up my food for them to eat. I'll give it up. I think that's the way most parents and grandparents are. So, when you start telling me that I have to go get food for them, I am going to do desperate things to get food for my grandchildren. And it's going to be chaos in the stores. I mean, extreme chaos. And so the most dangerous thing on earth is a fellow human being. And I think you've got to be prepared for that. Let me see. Thrive Life has what they call country white bread dough, and I used to order a can a month, and I don't do it anymore because I don't have any space to put anything anymore. But I probably have a couple cases of country white dough mix, and it's a combination of a bread mix, scone mix, and it's also a pizza dough mix. Just depends on how you make it. Then Algerson Farms has a bread, biscuit, and scone mix. And that's a very good product. I strongly recommend it. So, both of those are great products you can get, along with the LDS flour that they have in the number 10 cans. Let me see. BioLite Base Camp Pizza Oven. Have never heard of it. I don't have a BioLite. What do I have? I have a Jetboil. Yeah, I have Jetboil. Let me see here. But BioLite is the one where I believe it has the heat-induced charger, where you can actually charge your cell phone while you're cooking, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right? Fry bread. Thank you, Tracy. That's what that Boy Scout thing was called. Yes, and that's something that recently I'm finding myself less and less capable of handling. I got to get out there and take care of my tomatoes. And also, oh gosh, I was supposed to do a video today for cane fighting. And I haven't done that. And it's too dark to go out and do it now. But I'm supposed to do that for my online course and show them that I've practiced this week what it's going to be doing. So it says the sewage story is kind of fake. I don't know what you mean by that. But what I can tell you is in 1997, we were living in a municipal utility district. That's what we have here in Texas. Other than, you have the municipal city sewage and city water, all that kinds of stuff. If you're in a suburban area, then they have what they call MUDs, or municipal utility districts. In our municipal utility district, we had one of those thunderstorms come through. And so what happened was we had gravity feed of our sewage to a collection point, and that collection point had a pump, and that pump took all the raw sewage it collected, and then put it up over a hill, and then it gravity fed down into the city of Austin's municipal sewage system. Well, lightning struck that sewage pumping station and took it out. It got a direct hit by lightning. Now, about 250 yards upstream from where the sewage collection point was, upstream, okay, so this should be safe, was our wellhead for our drinking water supply. What was not known was there was a fracture in the earth that caused that sewage spill to go directly to the wellhead. And so we were drinking water tainted with raw sewage for a couple of days before we found it out. And we had a family member who was the first confirmed case of cryptosporidiosis. There was a very popular TV show at the time called X-Files with Scully and Mulder, the main characters. And I swear the two guys from CDC, the lady and a guy, called us after we had the confirmed cryptosporidiosis diagnosis from Austin Municipal Airport, Austin Bergstrom Airport. and said they would like to come straight over. They'd like to do some more testing. And so they got to the house at 10 o'clock, and I swear to God, it was Scully and Mulder. But anyhow, I have seen the effects of sewage spills. I don't think it's fake. We almost lost a family member. That is the number one reason why I have these, okay, is because I have seen what happens when a person ingests. And not only do I have that one, I also have this one. I have seen what happens to a person when you ingest sewage and you get cryptosporidium in your body. And it's not a pleasant thing at all. So I don't think there was anything fake about that, but I would be interested in hearing why you think that the sewage story is fake. Okay. Now, one of the things I have watched is Dave Canterbury in Self-Reliant Outfitters. He has a bush pot, and the bush pot has a grid in it, a grill. And so what he does is he takes his bush pot and turns it on its side, and then he has a small baking pan, puts the baking pan on the grill inside of the bush pot, covers it up, puts charcoal and everything around it, and turns his bush pot into an oven. And then he bakes his bread inside that bush pot oven. Very, very unique. So that's what I'm going to try to experiment with this summer. We'll see how far I get. My main reason why I don't do as many of the projects that I really want to do is because I still haven't learned how to splice different video clips together into one, trying to find a program for my Mac that can handle all this stuff. I've got a friend, and as a matter of fact, I interviewed him here on the channel. No, girls, you're not going out. I interviewed, he's trying to help me find the programming to easy enough for a 70-year-old to learn, so that I can do all this editing and clipping and bending and mending and everything else. So Joseph G says he used to work in wastewater. Okay, let me see. Is that the one who says that he doesn't believe I don't know. I didn't pay attention. I guess I should have. But anyhow, so, and then we also saw that one hack, and we suspect it was Chinese, who added too much chlorine to a water purification system and basically poisoned the people who were drinking that water. So there are all these different opportunities for these sleeper cells to really cause mass confusion and chaos in our country. Okay, so enough about the threats. What can we do to protect ourselves against it? And gosh, just today I was thinking about shaving it off. Now you've made me. Now that you have me looking like a teenager, I think I'll keep it. Yeah, so cutting the lines of communication, as I was talking about earlier, we wouldn't know what's happening. I mean, I wouldn't know what's happening in Bell County in comparison to Travis County, Williamson County, Hayes County, or Bartlett County, or Burnett County, or anything else here in Central Texas, let alone what's happening in El Paso County. This is very well discussed as far as communications in the Stonemont series of books by Stephen Smith, and trying to find out what's going on, because they've got all these different things that are happening. You've got the Mexican cartels coming up from the southwest. You've got the Muslim extremists coming from the northeast. You've got all these different threats that are coming into the country at the same time. And there's just no communication structure to find out what's happening to the people next to you and how to defend yourself against it. So that's another reason why I'm really, really beginning to wonder, what am I going to do as far as communications in a post-apocalyptic world? Got to get HF Ham. I've got to get HF Ham. I really want to find somebody who knows a lot about it and can help me put up. I did put in a ChatGPT request, and the request was, I would like to build a ham Radio Shack, 20 meter to 2 centimeter bands, which is HF basically to UHF. And I would like to spend less than $1,000. And I would like to also include specific dedicated HF receiver, so that I can keep that monitor that is doesn't eat a lot of electricity. And it gave me some solutions, it gave me some recommendations, but I would like to talk to an HF ham operator, so that I know whether ChatGPT knows what it's talking about or not. Let me see what we got here. We're talking about bread making, which is great. Uh, oh no! Whoa! I My experience with raw sewage is in Europe they use sewage as fertilizer. So here we'd call it effluent, but there they run it through the processes and then they just put it on their fields before the first snowfall. So we were skiing the Rossfeld the Rossfeld is in the southeastern portion of Bavaria. We were real close to Berchtesgaden, Hitler's eagle's nest, and and it was in April, and so the lower altitudes were starting to melt already, and I came down on a real good long run, and hit that water where it had the effluent stuff in it, and went face first into it. I threw that ski suit away. I figured there was no chance of it ever being cleaned out and being able to smell decent again. Um, Yeah, we had a family member send us pictures from New Jersey, and it's worse than we've ever seen here in Texas. I can give you that much. Um, yeah, so Dragon Slayer saying that somebody added chemicals to the water in Florida. So I think that's probably um, correct. Is that I think that there's an opportunity for them, and when is it going to happen? I don't know. I just have a gut feeling it's going to be before the end of the summer. I think there's all these different things that are going on. So okay, so let's spend the next couple minutes talking about what are we going to do about it. Well, number one, find a way to get good communications. So if you can, get yourself one of those good little battery operated HF, VHF, UHF receivers so that you can stay tuned in on any kind of transmission in your area. It's going to provide you with some sort of news. See if you can't establish a network of how you're going to communicate with other people. Because remember, this is going to be a two-way street. If you are receiving only and incapable of transmitting, so definitely take a look into CB radio, FMRS, GRS, and MERS as far as having some forms of communications capabilities. Then you can get tie into that channel 3 project from Amron. So that's AMRRON.com. Alpha Mike Romeo, Romeo Oscar November dot Charlie Oscar Mike. And so if you go there, it tells you all about the Channel 3 project and how you can be a relay uh, for all this information going up, and so it can be disseminated out to other stations as well as being collected and then come down to you, and then you can disseminate it to your group or to your neighbors or whatever the case might be. So one of the things that we might want to focus on here is, simple. One of the simple messages that we use in the military is called the salute report, SALUTE, Sierra Alpha Lima Uniform Tango Echo, or in Russian phonetics, a Semyon, Ilyana, Leonid, Tatiana, let me see, salute, Semyon, Anna, uh, Leonid, Uliana, Tatiana, Yelena. There we go. That's salute in Russian phonetics. and But anyhow, it's size, activity, location, unit, time when you noticed it, and equipment, any equipment that is noticed. You can kind of modify that a little bit, but those are the basic things you want to report as an observation of something you've seen somewhere else. So that it gives you an idea of some of the things you might want to report up to a higher headquarters or to another reporting station. So that if something is going on and you don't have the other forms of communication, your number one form of communication has got to be your cell phone. And then after your cell phone, your landline, possibly the internet, satellite phones, or anything like that. And then we're going to go to the other forms of communication. Remember that the UHF, VHF, Baofangs, Yaesus, and all those other handheld talkies are dependent upon a repeater, and those repeaters must be powered by electricity. So if you don't have electricity, those become line of sights. They aren't going to have the range that that they would pre-SHTF. Let me see here. If the grid goes down and you're able to meet at your local church or library on Saturdays at 9 a.m. Have not heard that, but that is a phenomenal suggestion. Um, and that would just be the closest church, regardless of affiliation, I'm going to guess, um, because that would become a center. Um, no, I don't think they would add arsenic. I don't think they would add any immediately toxic chemicals because, like I said, they want to capture the resources. They need our resources, and so anything they do to destroy those resources, water, soil, or anything like that, is going to basically undermine their entire reason for wanting to come here. Oh wow. Mm. So anyhow, Ausland, Jack, one of the things here in Texas, we have javelina, which is a wild form of pig, and they are so devastating to our crops and our herds and everything else that you can hunt javelina year round without a license. You're also allowed to hunt them from helicopters, and so they do have helicopter hunting trips for javelina, and find an entire herd of them and just pop away. There's no intentions for even trying to acquire the meat. So Rick, I don't know if you know it or not, but my 21 years in the Army, I was in signals intelligence. Um, I don't have my little hat here with me, do I? Anyhow, if you take a look at my logo, you'll see that that's the Army Security Agency. So if you put the Army Security Agency, the Air Force Security Service, and the Navy Security Group all in the same building, it becomes the National Security Agency. So my first MOS was 98 Bravo, which is a code breaker. My next MOS after that was a 98 Golf 4 Hotel Romeo Uniform Charlie 8, which is a Russian voice intercept operator, which is why I know Russian. And then when I became a warrant, I became a 352 Charlie, which is a signals intelligence analyst and reporter. So let me tell you about direction finding. With one piece of equipment, all they can get is a line of bearing. So they can tell, that signal is coming from this direction. That's all they know. They don't know the distance or anything else. So if you have two different pieces of equipment and they both get a line of bearing at the same time on the same transmitter at the same frequency, now you have what's called a cut. So that's probably going to have an accuracy of plus or minus a kilometer radius, depending upon the range away from the transmitter that you are. Three lines of bearing intersecting on the same frequency at the same time is called a fix, and that's targetable information. Now we do have a couple airborne DF systems. We have guardrail. We have quick fix. Quick fix is the EH60. That's all of our direction finding equipment mounted in a Black Hawk. So remember, you have to have it at roughly the same time. So if the Black Hawk is moving at 120 miles an hour and it takes a DF cut, and then it takes another DF cut. So now you have two lines of bearing on the same frequency, same transmitter, but from different locations. Now you still have a cut, and you can get a fix off of that as well. But regular direction finding with just one or two pieces of equipment, it's not going to happen. The chances that they're listening to you, slim to none. I will tell you that there's so many transmitters out there, and then in order to maintain 24-hour communications, we had 4-0 we had 4-0 staffing. So that means we had 4 rotating tricks. So you would work, A trick would be working days, let's say, B trick was on swings, C trick was on mids, and then D trick was on break. So you'd work 6-2. So 6 days on, 2 days off, 6 swings, 2 days off, 6 midnight shifts, 2 days off, then you'd rotate through that. So that means you had to have 4 intercept operators for every frequency that you were monitoring. I don't think anybody's going to be looking at your communications to where they're willing to put 4 English language specialists listening to you, especially from the Chinese perspective. Oh, let's see here. So it's just my opinion. Uh, yeah. So closest church library doesn't matter what. So that's great. Because I walk to church. Oh, I was just talking about you, Steve. Golly, welcome, welcome, welcome. So I was talking, yeah, I was just talking about the importance of communications and setting up. Uh, I don't know how long you've been here, but setting up the communication systems because you've got the uh, Muslim horde coming from the northeast. You've got the cartels coming from the southwest towards Stonemont, and so creating that entire sphere of communications and networking is going to be extremely important. And so, great. I'm glad to hear that. So that's going to be very, very good. Um, so for those of you who don't know, that's integrative preparedness. That's Steve Smith. He is the author of the Stonemont series, and he's got 6 fantastic books out. I strongly recommend those. We have been doing those. We've been reviewing those as they've been published on this channel, and just a great book series of books. Um, he gets into some really good OPSEC things that I think you need to be considered. You need to take into consideration. And so here in the near future, what I'm going to be doing is I'm working on generating some stuff where we'll be doing some discussions about how do you take care of OPSEC in your communications. I'll be talking about codes and ciphers and the differences between the two. I'll be talking about how you can encode and decode, how you can encipher and decipher. Remember that doing that during peacetime is against the law. So you cannot encipher your communications right now with the intention to deceive the government or anything like that. So I'm going to teach you to do it in case of an emergency, how you can do it and how it can be relatively safe. So here's the thing. Here's investment of time. I am out in the field and I receive a code and it's a one-time pad and I can look at it and I say, this is a one-time pad. Chances are it's a tactical thing that's telling unit 1, move to this grid location. By the time I break that code, unit 1 has been in that grid location and already commenced their attack. It's not going to be of any relevant intelligence to me. So that's the whole process of encryption and decryption is you want to make it so that the enemy has to spend a little bit of time investing in trying to understand what you're saying. But once they do understand what you're saying, it's too late. It's already become moot. And so that's part of the whole thing of how deep of a level of encipherment do you want to use? And so we'll be talking about that a little bit more. Most dangerous weapon in any military unit. Well, that's true. So the forward observer and just having artillery available to you and or an airstrike, either one, is going to be critical. And that's probably I agree. That's going to be the one that we like the most. One of the bad things about my unit and being in a signals intelligence unit is we have more antennas than a division tactical operations center. So we are probably going to be one of those main areas that's hit by the enemy first. Wow, Dragon Slayer, I'm so jealous. Gosh, yeah. Yeah, we call them heavy fisted here. That's true. And during peacetime, that's absolutely true. And so, yeah, if you don't have a license, don't, as a matter of fact, it's against the law, except in a life-saving emergency to transmit on a ham radio without a license. You are allowed to do it under a life-saving measure, but that's it. So, yeah, most of them probably won't communicate with you at all. Oh, great. Thank you, Camper Van Clark. Steve has a very good perspective. So here's the difference between the two of us, and we are in agreement 95% of the time. He takes his perspective is from he's law enforcement. He's an ex-Leo, and so his perspective is in fighting the types of people we're probably going to be fighting most likely in a post-apocalyptic world: the gangs, the corrupt individuals, the people who have mental problems. I'm fighting organized military units. So we have different perspectives. For example, when we talk about weapons, his perspective is he wants to have primary stopping power in his handgun, whereas as a soldier, my handgun is there only to get me back to my rifle. My rifle is my primary weapon, and so just simple little things that although we are in vast majority agreement. There can be small, very, very minute differences of opinion. Um, so I am looking into both FRS and GMRS, and I really don't understand the difference that much between the two. And I'm going to continue to investigate those. So thank you, Joseph G, for that reminder. Um, so Rick Caldwell says, Steve, you remind him of a very wise man. You remind him of Cold War prepper. Oh, no, his grandpa. There we go. Um, Yeah, so any kind of intervening terrain is going to impede your ability to communicate with each other. That can be trees, that can be mountains, that can be buildings. Any kind of intervening terrain is going to absorb the radio frequency that you're transmitting or receiving. Um, and let me see. Okay, so here's my solutions. Number one, find some sort of communications, at least be able to listen to reports and news. So the Channel 3 project says that they're looking for to transmit on Channel 3, whether that be CB, GMRS, FRS, or MERS, on the hour, every hour, 24 times a day. So they want you to be there at the Channel 3 in those four communications modes on the hour after SHTF. And that'll be one way of communicating with each other and finding out what's going on. So at least be able to receive. Then after that, if you can, find a way. So GMRS, FRS, CB radio, MERS, find a way to be able to transmit a report back to of things that you may have seen that are suspicious or may warrant somebody else being able to react to and defend against. Um, I like LDS Prepper, Joseph G. Yeah, that's great. Um, I am sure it is. If it's a tube radio, yes, it can be very, very big. Um, but then tube radios will also probably survive any kind of an EMP. Um, well, thank you. That's a very kind comment for you there, Camper Van Clark. Okay. So I just wanted you to be aware that we do have a whole bunch of Chinese in the U.S. Are they sleeper agents? We don't know. I would like for you to be concerned about how you're going to communicate, how you're going to receive warnings of um, possibility of contaminated water, food supplies, etc. Possible movements by enemy actors coming towards you, the ability to communicate that information back up towards somebody else who may be able to respond to it. I think that one of the things you're going to have to do is you're also going to have to take a look at the threat that's going to be caused by the chaos and your fellow man, your fellow human being, once SHTF happens. I think especially after about day 3, you may be fairly okay as far as the chaos, surviving the chaos and getting around until maybe about day 3. And then when it sinks in that this is not a test and it's going to be here for some while, and they don't understand what's going on, then that's when you need to hunker down and stay away from other people. I'm going to say that I believe other people are going to be your biggest threat at that point. So that's kind of where we are. Um, Anything that anybody would like to add to that, make sure you have your food supplies, your water supplies. Here's a thought as well. If you have a way of collecting water, keep those empty bottles. I drink these. I probably drink two of these a day. This is 88 cents a bottle at Walmart. It's just flavored carbonated water, and no calories, nothing in it except for fizz and sweetener, artificial sweetener. So keep those empty bottles, because even if you don't have water now that you're putting into them, if you can collect water and purify water, that may be another thing you can do to help your fellow man, is providing them with clean, drinkable, potable water. The same thing with if you can provide some sort of food. Some of the foods that I collect so that I can pass them out to other people is the Maruchan cup of soups, the noodles and a flavor packet, or ramen noodles. I like envelopes of oatmeal. That's a great meal. A box of macaroni will feed a family of four, macaroni and cheese. So little things like that. What are the little things you can do that give away to people who are starving, that can help them, that is not going to appear as if you have a whole bunch of other stuff. The other thing is I want to really, really emphasize OPSEC. So especially for the first, month or so after SHTF, when people are beginning to starve, you don't want to have a whole bunch of excess canned foods that you've been eating thrown out in your trash pile, because people are going to know that you have all kinds of stuff. Take a look at what the other neighbors have thrown out and try to keep your trash about equivalent to theirs. Once you start getting more than that, find a way to store it where you're keeping it hidden from them, so nobody can rifle through it. Nobody has any idea, or has the idea that you might have more to share with them, that they might be willing to come take from you. So that's it. Next week, we're going to be taking a look at the next several pages of Selko Begovich's book. And I was just watching another channel, and the guy's a consultant, and he said this is one of the best books he's ever read as far as what's the reality behind SHTF. So Selko Begovic and his year in the Bosnian campaign, where his hometown was basically destroyed. And so, we're going to get into some of the things, except some of the things that are extra gory that YouTube doesn't want me to talk about. So Dragon Slayer's got a couple coffee barrels for rainwater. The first 10 minutes of rain is cleaning the gutters and roofs. Yes, that's absolutely true. You're going to get all kinds of terrible stuff, bird droppings in your water. But then again, even if you get that in your water, that's what coffee filters are for. So you get that preliminary filtering system. Then after you do so I've got a 3-step system. I want to put it through a coffee filter first, from a coffee filter into a zero water, then from the zero water into the Big Berkey, and then from the Big Berkey into my drinking water system. So that's kind of how I'm going to prolong the life of the Berkey filters, as well as make sure that we have good, clean water. So as we bring this to a conclusion, next Tuesday night, Selko Begovic will continue on his book. We're going to be working on his book until the end of July. I'm not going to get into the last 2 chapters of it, simply because, they are really, really gory. And I recommend you get the book. I'll put a link down below. Please get the book, because this is reality, and a reality that we won't be able to talk about here on the channel. You might even get Steve. Steve has a Rumble channel, and so we might get Steve to even talk about some of those type of things on his Rumble channel, and then you can go there, and you have a lot more ability to talk about things with less restrictions than we have here on YouTube. So, Book of Numbers, chapter 6, verses 24, 25, 26. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord let his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord look upon you kindly and grant you peace. Do me a favor. Remember that we're all in this together. None of us is better than the others. We share what we have. We share the knowledge that we have, so that we can all thrive and exist through whatever's going to happen together. We have got to be the catalyst of building and rebuilding this great country back into what it once was. Once we've got through this SHTF situation that we know is coming, we just don't know when or to what extent. I'm planning for the worst. So until then, be kind, polite, and respectful to each other because the only way through us is for us to be together. Togetherness is the key. Take care, everybody. Thank you for being here, and I will see you Tuesday evening. Take care. Bye bye.